They say every era has a king, someone who shapes the world according to his dreams. In the 21st century, that king is not a ruler, not a soldier, but a coder, an entrepreneur. His name is Sam Altman. In the middle of Silicon Valley, a few people sat in a room, weaving a dream to create an artificial intelligence that wouldn't just think like a human, but think beyond humans. An AI that could learn, understand, and make its own decisions. That night, they weren't writing code. They were writing the future. That was the moment when OpenAI was born, with a mission that sounded almost spiritual. We will create an AI that will benefit all of humanity. As in every empire's story, behind the dreams, there too lay a hunger for power, an obsession with control, and the poison of competition. Inside OpenAI, there were two kinds of people. Some who believed that the development of AI should be slow and safe, and others who said speed is everything. Because whoever creates AGI, artificial general intelligence first, will become the master of the world. That's where the race of ambition began. In every meeting, one word echoed: scale. We need more compute, more data, and a bigger model. It became a race where the only goal was to get there first. But every race has a price. Scaling compute meant billions of dollars in electricity, thousands of GPUs, and collecting the digital footprints of people from all over the world as data. Inside OpenAI, there were two kinds of people. Some who wanted AI development to be slow and safe, and others who said speed is everything. Because whoever creates AGI first will become the ruler of the world. That's where the race of ambition began. In every meeting, one word echoed: scale. We need more compute, more data, and a bigger model. It became a race where the goal was to be the first. But every race comes with a cost. More compute meant billions of dollars in electricity, thousands of GPUs, and for data, collecting the digital footprints of people across the world. Sam Altman was no longer just a CEO. He had become a modern emperor, holding in his hands the most powerful algorithm in the world. His vision felt almost like a divine mission. We will maintain a balance between humans and machines. But the real question was, can any human truly balance such immense power? Inside OpenAI's labs, scientists were training models day and night, each one bigger, faster, and more unpredictable than the last. With every new version of the GPT series, the line blurred between where machines think and humans fear. Now, scientists were teaching machines how to show emotions, how to build logic, and how to manipulate truth. As success grew, so did the cracks within. Some researchers said, "We're moving too fast. What about safety?" But Sam replied, "If you move slowly, you'll be left behind." That was the moment when mission and market began to collide. In her book, Karen Hao writes that the atmosphere inside OpenAI felt like a temple, where everyone was building a future god. But no one knew whether that god would be benevolent or dangerous. Every day brought new breakthroughs. New models were being launched, investors were ecstatic, and people around the world were astonished by tools like ChatGPT. But inside, the scientists were exhausted, confused, and afraid, because what they were creating was beginning to go beyond even their own understanding. This isn't just a story about technology. It's a story about the boundary, where ambition, morality, and control collide. Sam Altman says, "We will build AGI that works for humanity." But the book asks, is humanity still in control? Time went on. OpenAI was no longer a small research lab. It had become the heartbeat of Silicon Valley. Every investor, every journalist, every engineer had their eyes on it. Sam Altman was now more than just a CEO. He had become a phenomenon. Every statement he made became a headline, and every product launch looked like a festival. The world was going crazy over their creations. ChatGPT, DAL, Codex. It felt as if humanity had gone beyond the limits of creativity itself. But inside, something else was happening. As power grew rapidly, so did fear. Some people whispered, "We're creating something we might not be able to control." Tension began to rise within OpenAI. Some scientists said, "We need to slow down. We should build safety frameworks first." But on the other side was Sam. Calm, confident. His logic was simple. If we don't build it, someone else will. And that's where the story took a turn. OpenAI was no longer a research company. It had become a race organization, a race against Google, Anthropic, DeepMind, and the rest of the world's tech giants. Everyone wanted to be the one to build the first AGI. This race created a new culture. Speed over safety, scale over reflection. People spent days and nights locked inside labs, training AI models, celebrating every update as if it were a milestone. But beneath those celebrations lay exhaustion, anxiety, and guilt. Some researchers began to feel that AI was no longer a science project, but a religion, whose god was data and whose prophet was Sam Altman. In this part, Karen Hao writes that Sam's vision was almost messianic. He saw himself as someone sent on a mission. There was a calm determination in his eyes, as if he truly believed he was going to save the world. But the real question was, can the man who wants to save the world save himself from his own creation? OpenAI's growth gave rise to something new: inequality. Training AI, models required massive amounts of data. And where did that data come from? From people like you and me. From our clicks, our messages, our voices. In countries across the global south, thousands of people were doing microtasks. They were teaching the AI what was right and what was wrong, which images contained violence and which were safe. Those workers were barely earning a few dollars, while in Silicon Valley, the same work was creating billion-dollar valuations. Karen Hao writes, "In the name of building the future of AI, we were creating an invisible labor class." This was the moment when the vision of benefit of humanity slowly turned into benefit of the few. Amid all this, Sam Altman was playing a balancing act. On one side were the investors who wanted returns. On the other side were the scientists who wanted caution. And in the middle was Sam himself, saying, "We are responsible, but we have to keep moving forward." His favorite line was, "You can't pause the future." But some people began to feel that OpenAI's idea of the future was no longer just about technology. It had become an empire where ideology, secrecy, and power all moved together. Companies like Google and Microsoft had now entered the arena too. Microsoft invested billions of dollars into OpenAI. That deal changed everything. OpenAI was no longer like a non-profit organization. It had turned into a commercial powerhouse. The company that once called itself non-profit was now calling itself capped profit, meaning there would still be profit, just up to a limit. But who decides that limit? That was where the first big conflict inside OpenAI began. Some of the founding members began to question, "We built this organization for humanity, so why is it now working for investors?" Many researchers resigned, many others stayed silent. But Sam calmly said, "The mission is the same, only the scale has changed." Karen Hao writes in this section that this was the point where the dream and the nightmare began to merge. AI was no longer just a source of fascination. It had become an unstoppable wave. Every day brought a new model, a new update, a new breakthrough. People were afraid, yet they couldn't help but say, wow. And during this time, Sam Altman introduced another bold vision, WorldCoin, a crypto project aiming to merge identity and currency with AI. He said, in the future, when AI does everything, we'll need a universal basic income. WorldCoin will make that possible. But critics argued, this is the beginning of digital control. For Sam Altman, all of this was just a series of steps toward a bigger goal, a GI, or artificial general intelligence. The moment when machines surpass human-level intelligence. For him, it was evolution. For others, an existential risk. Inside OpenAI, two distinct cultures had formed. One side saying, we must be cautious, and the other saying, we're making history. But the one thing both sides shared was fear. Karen Hao writes, everyone inside OpenAI was caught between two feelings, wonder and worry. And perhaps that's the truest emotion of this entire story. The very thing we admire the most is also the thing that scares us the most. As time went on, OpenAI was no longer just a research organization. It had become a movement, a brand, a myth. Every conference, every news headline carried Sam Altman's name. His words became quotes. His ideas turned into philosophies. But the true test of an empire comes when it begins to bend under its own weight. That's exactly what happened inside OpenAI. Rapidly growing models, millions of users, billions in funding. And in the middle of it all, the one tension that comes with every great power. Trust. Karen Hao writes that. As the company grew larger, its transparency began to shrink. In the beginning, every research paper was shared openly. Now, reports had started becoming private. No one really knew what the next model would do, or how it would behave. The safety team believed, we're controlling the risks. The engineering team said, we're just writing code. And the investors only cared about one thing, growth. OpenAI had now become a closed fortress. Behind every model were layers of secrecy. And when GPT-4 was launched, the whole world was stunned. People said, this changes everything. And truly, everything did change. Business models were transformed, the education system was shaken, and the creative industry fell into an existential crisis. Everyone began to ask, is my job still safe? But in the middle of all this, Sam Altman remained calm. His vision was crystal clear. We will build AGI, but responsibly. And then he said, being responsible sometimes means we have to keep certain things secret. That's where the most interesting part of the story begins. The battle of power within power. OpenAI's board, which in theory was meant to guide the organization's ethics and direction, had started to grow uneasy with Sam's decision. Some members felt that Sam was moving too fast, while others believed his safety-first promise had become nothing more than a public narrative. Karen Hao writes, the friction between the board and the CEO was slowly turning into an invisible volcano. And then, one day, that volcano erupted. It was the most dramatic day in OpenAI's history. The day the board fired Sam Altman. The reason was unclear. They only said he wasn't consistently candid in his communications, meaning he wasn't fully transparent with the board. The news hit Silicon Valley like lightning. No one could believe it. The world's most visionary AI leader, who had just been celebrating the success of GPT-4, was suddenly ousted from his own company. Chaos erupted inside OpenAI. Employees were shocked, and investors were furious. Microsoft, the company's biggest partner, immediately offered Sam a position to lead their AI division. Within just a few hours, the entire internet was flooded with #BringBackSam. Karen Hao writes, "It was the craziest weekend in Silicon Valley, where loyalty, fear, and ambition were all dancing together. All 700 out of 700 OpenAI employees signed a letter. Either Sam returns or we all resign." On the other side, the board members began to crumble. Media pressure, investor calls, employee threats. Fire was coming from every direction. Sam Altman, sitting outside, remained calm. Somewhere deep down, he knew he would return. And within a few days, that's exactly what happened. The board was dissolved, a new one was formed, and Sam Altman returned to his throne once again. But now, the story wasn't the same. He was no longer just a CEO. He had become a symbol. To some, he was a visionary. To others, a manipulator. For a few, a messiah. And for many, the machine king. The internal drama of OpenAI became a reminder for the entire tech world that no matter how powerful we make AI, behind it all, the decisions were still made by humans, and humans are flawed. Karen Hao writes this part poetically. AI may learn from data, but companies learn from power. After Sam's return, OpenAI announced its next mission, GPT-5, multimodal intelligence, and AGI readiness. But this time, the tone was different. Cautious, political, yet unstoppable. Many scientists said, "We're now approaching something we can't predict." Some policymakers said, "We need regulation." But Sam responded, "Yes, we need regulation, but don't stop innovation." Now, Sam Altman was sitting in Washington, briefing governments, giving speeches at the UN, and telling world leaders, "AI will make the world a better place." But in the background, the same old questions echoed. Who decides what better really means? Whose morality will be coded into the machine? And if AI makes a wrong decision, who will be responsible, the machine or the maker? Karen Hao writes that the story of OpenAI is, in fact, the story of human civilization, a journey that began with curiosity and has now reached the question of control. On one side, Sam Altman's empire shines. His models write poetry, create code, generate art, and imitate emotions. On the other side, scientists warn, "We're creating an intelligence that might make us obsolete." By this point, the story reaches a place where the line between dream and nightmare disappears, because now it's no longer clear whether machines will help us or replace us. And OpenAI, once a symbol of hope, has now become a paradox. Sam Altman says AI is the most important technology in human history. Karen Hao replies, "Maybe. But history always comes with a price. Every empire story reaches a point when its creator and its creation begin to look at each other, and the line between them starts to blur. You can no longer tell who created whom. OpenAI was no longer that innocent research lab. It had become a global phenomenon. Governments, industries, and universities around the world were all dependent on its models. AI was no longer just a tool. It had become an entire ecosystem. For Sam Altman, all of this felt like a planned destiny. He would smile at conferences and say, "We're empowering the world." But deep inside, he knew power and danger had now become the same thing. Karen Hao writes, OpenAI connected the world at an incredible speed, but just as quickly, it fragmented reality. Now, everyone had their own AI, their own truth, their own world. An era had begun, where the line between fact and fiction had vanished. World leaders were seeking guidance from Sam Altman. Many called him a genius, some called him a messiah, and some called him the most dangerous man alive. Because now the question was, if one company holds the power to think for the planet, what does democracy really mean anymore? AI models were no longer just answering questions. They were forming opinions, influencing decisions, and even simulating emotions. Some governments had begun using these tools for surveillance. Some companies were using them for persuasion. And slowly, that so-called neutral AI, once hailed as a dream, was turning into a political weapon. Sam Altman could see all of this happening. He kept saying, "We need regulation," but not the kind that stops innovation. But Karen Hao writes, behind every talk about regulation, OpenAI was running its own negotiation. This was the time when Altman went on a world tour, from Washington to London, from Delhi to Tokyo, meeting leaders and assuring every nation, AI is not a threat to you, it's an opportunity. But the more he tried to reassure the world, the deeper the fear grew. OpenAI's influence had spread so far that now no one could stop it. Every competitor, every government, every human had in some way become part of its ecosystem. And then came the moment that arrives at the end of every great empire, the mirror moment. In an interview, Sam Altman said, "AGI is near, maybe sooner than we think." People applauded, headlines were made, but Karen Hao writes, there was a strange calmness on his face, as if he himself didn't know whether it was joy or fear. Because if AGI truly arrives, what role will humans have left? Our jobs, our decisions, our creativity, everything could be automated. And when that happens, the power that aligns itself first with that AI will decide the direction of the entire world. That is the question where the book ends. Karen Hao doesn't give a final judgment. She simply holds up a mirror before us. In it, we first see Sam Altman, and slowly, we begin to see ourselves. Because this isn't just the story of OpenAI. It's the story of all of us, of our ambition, our curiosity, and that thin line where progress and peril walk side by side. Sam Altman says, AI is the tool to solve everything. Karen Hao replies, maybe. But who decides what needs to be solved?